E, S, and S.
E, S, and S. Let me write that down.
There's 3 in Michigan.
E,
S, and S.
and you're not saying and S, you're saying in?
And.
Okay, so make sure I got it right.
Yes, and
E,
S.
S, and S.
Yes.
Right.
All right. Dominion.
And Hart Intercivic.
And how do you spell that Hart? Is it
H-A-R-T.
H-A-R-T? It's like Jonathan and Jennifer Hart from Heart to Heart back in the 1980s.
I remember that.
A great show. All right. So do any of these companies have lobbyists?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, wait a minute.
They're
Voting machine companies have lobbyists.
They make political donations.
That was my next question. That was where I was going next. Doesn't that seem to be a conflict of interest?
Well, look at the connections that people have already drawn out with Nancy Pelosi and her husband in their connection to the voting machine companies. Mitt Romney and his family's connection to the voting machine companies. There is a whole list of these connections that people have. Bill Barr has a connection through his family to voting machines. We have an entire a graph that I've seen that lays out sort of the world or the network of these voting machine companies and all the ways that they interplay
With the politicians?
with politicians, other companies, foundations, the Clinton Foundation. They're connected through board members to companies to board, related board members. On like Clinton Foundation compared to other companies. There's Chinese connections to all these voting machine companies. It's sort of a vast chart on.
Are we talking
these
about
connections.
a billion-dollar industry here?
Oh, absolutely. No,
How many billions are we into?
I don't know how many billions, but it's a large number. Absolutely, it's more than $1 billion.
But so while ago we were talking about the Republicans didn't want to talk about this because they didn't do their homework on the machines in Michigan. Could it be that they didn't do their homework or that they were lobbied and funded?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't know the answer to that. It's possible, but I don't know that. But what I do know is they appropriated the money for these machines. If the machines turn out to be dirty, so to speak, their hands are dirty. They brought the machines into the state, and rather than having the courage to stand up and say we may have made a mistake, they continue to deny, and not only do they continue to deny, but they use the media as their platform to do that.
Yeah.
Now think about
junkyard dogs.
Well, right, because the media in Michigan is typically going to parrot everything that's said by the Democrats. Even today with the Governor Whitmer scandal in Michigan and the fact that she got caught traveling to Florida to vacation during the lockdown, right? Well, when that story broke, the media immediately rushed to her side and started writing stories about how, oh no, it's not true. She was just going to visit her father who's sick. Nothing to see here. So the media is very useful in that respect for the Democrats. But listen, when the message that the Republicans want to put out is there was no voter fraud, then the media is happy to parrot those comments as well. Because listen, we all know Republicans and Democrats have their people within the media they can reach out to and put out stories.
But if you have people that are traditionally aligned with Republicans saying there's voter fraud, and you have Republicans saying there isn't, then those Republicans saying there isn't can be used by the media to discredit Republicans saying we need to have an audit of the machines.
Oh, right, which is why right now my biggest challenge right now, it seems, is Republicans in Michigan. The elected Republicans in Michigan, in Lansing, are the biggest challenge because in that case, the Democrats don't even have to say anything. The media doesn't have to say anything because all the criticism comes directly from the Republicans in Lansing.
So let's talk about your credentials for a minute. There was a young man that was on here debating last night over the phone who called Mr. Lindell, and he asked if he could put him on the air live, and he did. And I think he was from Salon, and I think his name was Zachary. Was his name Zachary, guys? I think it was Zachary, and it was a 25-minute debate they had pretty late last night, around 11:15 or so. We were sitting here. We went on for 25 minutes.
Wow.
So anyway, your name came up, And Zachary wanted to say that he does some research on you, and that basically you don't have a whole lot of credentials because you don't teach at a university right now. But weren't you like nominated for some big award or something, like an international award or something? I know you tend to not want to toot your own horn, but I'm going to ask you to do so anyway. Maybe Zachary's watching.
Well, as a graduate student, I made a series of discoveries, one after another, 3 in a row. And by the time I announced my third discovery, it made the cover of Science magazine.
Which is the most read science magazine in the world?
Yes.
Well, that's not too shabby.
No, and Naturwissenschaften, which is the...
What was that?
Naturwissenschaften is
Which is the European version?
It's the European, and the editor of that is the head of the Nobel nominating committee.
So wait a minute, make sure the audience got that. The head of the Nobel nominating committee runs that European magazine that is the European branch, really, of the science magazine.
He came and spent a week with me to investigate my discovery and make sure and get all my biographical information and stuff like that. And then invited me to submit a bunch more articles.
I mean,
that usually means something, but I would have to make an inference.
What does it mean?
Well, the head of the Nobel Committee is collecting a dossier on you. What does that mean?
Does that mean they're looking to maybe nominate you?
Well, maybe, yeah, but I don't know that. It's a pretty good assumption.
Yeah.
But I have 60 scientific publications peer-reviewed, including many invited articles. That means that...
Only 60 is what I've heard.
Only 60, yeah.
As a criticism.
Only 60.
Only 60.
How many does the average physicist have?
Well, I don't know. I only had a 10-year academic career, so that's pretty good.
Why did you only have a 10-year academic career?
I just became so disillusioned with academics. I was sitting there and my science was very famous. I was traveling around the world giving lectures. My professor and I had to divide it up, and we had to make an agreement with each other. He says, we can't get any work done. Everybody wants to hear about our work, so let's agree. We'll each do one a month. So we, 1 month we were just going around the world giving lectures and talking about our wonderful discovery. It was very cool.
And you discovered how to make 3D models of molecules on surfaces?
3-dimensional images of molecules sitting on surfaces.
I'm not doing too bad keeping up, am I?
No, you're doing great.
I've only post-edited this a million times and heard it a million times. It does help to post-edit television shows and documentaries if you're going to re-interview them again.
To go to credibility, yes, it's nice to talk about the science. And I left academics because I was getting all kinds of offers from major corporations around the world because of my notoriety from that.
And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements you've signed. So if we were to talk about some of the stuff he's done for the government and agencies or major corporations, these be things that they would
then
identify
I need a lawyer.
I need a lawyer. But they'd identify with some of these things immediately.
But some people know me from today. I mean, around the world, people know me from the bowling community. Just about every bowling pro shop in the world, there are about 10,000 of them, has something in them that I made.
Really? What's that?
And I have all kinds of bowling inventions.
Really?
And I could talk about that because I don't sign NDAs for that.
So give me one.
Well, the one that I think that's the most popular these days is you set a bowling ball on. It kind of looks like a machine about this big. It plugs into your computer, and you just turn the ball, and it does a laser scan of your surface and tells you the microfine structure of the surface of the ball.
Why would you want to know that?
Do you want to know the treads on a tire on your car? Yeah. Why? Because the treads on the car tell you how it grips the road.
Right.
Well, what does a bowling ball do? It grips the lane.
Grips the floor.
And if you know the grit pattern on the ball surface, you can control how the ball goes down the lane.
And that is in how many bowling alleys?
About 400 of them now, I think.
And okay, what else have you done in the bowling industry?
There's all kinds of gauges, and I mean, think about it.
Why the bowling? Are you a bowler?
I'm a physicist.
Okay, but
and a ball rolling down the lane that's spinning, that's a cool physics thing.
Okay.
And it combines the physics of that with the fact that it's a surface phenomenon, which is my specialty. Surface. I've built all kinds of laser scanners to evaluate surfaces before. So
Zachary,
it all goes together.
So Zachary with the salon, you might want to rethink your criticism of Dr. Frank. Although we would love to have you call in and let's see if you could like to keep up with Dr. Frank. I don't think that's.
I do know a lot of physics, and I work with very smart youngsters. So I don't mind taking on a youngster in a debate either. If you wanted to take me on, because I teach at this school for extraordinarily
But let's
gifted
just remember
youngsters.
it's the salon, and we're giving them more publicity right now than they would ever get in the
Let's don't
10
cast
years.
our pearls there.
Exactly right. I love that.
I don't need to waste my time.
Well,
if he's truly interested, I don't mind taking on a kid with an honest debate. But a lot of times they just want to badmouth you.
Exactly. But I thought it was good to bring up because we were being seen by a lot of people, and that came up, and I wanted to give you a chance to refute that. I wanted to refute that.
Well, one of the reasons why I think it's actually relevant to the discussion is because the reason I was able to discover what I did was because I took a massive set of data, because I had gathered, I built a custom electron microscope that produced this huge, hundreds of thousands of data points. And I had to develop software to analyze it and image it and recognize the patterns in it. And that's when I discovered it, because nobody had done that before.
Yeah.
Well, guess what I just did for the election? I took this huge amount of data, I graphed it in about 73 different ways, and then I went, hey, wait a minute, I recognize that pattern right there.
You know what, Dr. Frank? I really wish you would get excited about your work. It's really hard to interview a guy that is so, bored with what he's doing.
Yeah, I love my life.
I know you do.
I really do. I have.
You're living the dream, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. It's like, different phases of your life. I had my academic career, which I left and I went into business for a while, and now I'm pursuing some new ideas, and I think I'm going to be doing.
But you're having
elections
fun
for a
with
while.
us, aren't you?
Oh, of course.
This has been a blast.
Oh, of course. I love this. This is a lot of fun. It's fun to discover things.
Yeah.
And I remember the morning that I sat there. It was a Saturday morning. It was like 10 in the morning, and I went, boom, there was the key. The key is the equation that allows you to correlate all these things.
But let's talk about that, by the way, because correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going off my memory, but you were studying with your class. You like to study real-world things.
Yes.
And so you were studying the 2010 census in
Yes.
September of 2020?
Yeah.
I'm keeping up.
Yeah, you are.
And then along comes the election in November of 2020.
Yeah.
And you start studying Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And as you're studying it, you see these two little bumps in
Yeah.
the voting pattern.
And I
you
said,
say, wait a
"That's
minute,
familiar.
I've seen
I've
that
seen that
before.
somewhere, yeah."
And you went back to the census, and you saw
Because I
those
just
two-
been teaching it to my students.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, wait a minute, I recognize that. It'd be like seeing, hey, that's Mama. You recognize Mama's face in there. It's like, hey, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Because of that, I was willing to spend 2 or 3 days of my computer fans whirring away, scouring vast amounts of data to pull the data that I need.
How many
out.
computers?
I had 2 running simultaneously for about 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
And
To scan all that data.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think nobody else has seen it before, because I wouldn't have even known to look for it
Right.
if I hadn't recognized.
So do you
Mama.
think it's providential that you were studying
Absolutely.
the 2010 census in September, the 2010 census in September 2020?
But before you answer that, let me jump in here. There's been a lot of confusion that our study
Yes.
that we put out
Yes.
is based on the 2010 census.
It's not.
It's not. It's the 2019 census,
Yes,
right?
the most current one.
Yeah, but people have tried to reach back and equate his
Yes,
comments that he
yes.
just made about
Yes.
his prior studies with the 2010,
Right.
and somehow claim that our numbers in this study are based off of the 2010 census.
Right.
But they're not.
No, they're
Yours
not.
are based off the 2019.
But the reason why there's confusion
In Michigan.
The reason why there's confusion though is because the algorithm is based upon the 2010 census. The algorithm that is being used to control the elections is. But that doesn't mean that I'm using it in my numbers. So like when I show populations, I'm showing you the current populations. But the algorithm has to have some reference point. So no, you can't just like add a million 60-year-olds all at once. You got to know how many can you add. Well, the problem is when you download the current census from the federal government, it's in 5-year buckets. So it's like this group of this 5-year group, this 5-year group, this 5-year group. The detail, you have to go back to the 2010 census. So you do is you take the 2010 census, you move it 10 years later, the shape. You normalize the shape to the current population. Guess what that looks like? Looks like the registrations.
Looks like the registrations.
And that's how that's how you know, because a computer's stupid. It's going to do what you tell it. It needs to know how many people can I add. Well, how would it know how many people it could add? Has to make reference to the census.
Because if it's audited, they need to be able to cover the steal.
Wait,
Exactly.
wait. I've been told over and over again that computers make mistakes all the time. And it's just human error when there's a computer mistake.
Yeah.
And you're saying that computers just do what you tell them to do.
That's all they can do.
Okay.
And by the way, that's why this was easy to spot this time, because the computer had to do that so much, what you told it to do, that it basically filled up the shape, and it made the shape stand out even more.
So when Lindsey Graham said that he doesn't believe there's voter fraud because he doesn't think computers could actually affect the election.
I think he's not right.
Okay. He's not right.
He's not right, and that's being generous.
I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
Scientists don't like to make statements of absolute truth. They try
Right.
to speculate a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I have a faith, so I do believe in absolute truth.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And we agree on that for sure. So again, I want to make it real clear. The reason they needed the 2010 census
Yes.
was so that if there was an investigation, they could do what?
Well, the computer algorithm has to know how much to add. the way that basically the algorithm works this way. An algorithm, don't get scared by that word. It's just a series of steps. And
Like a recipe.
Exactly. I put that on our little thing together.
That's how I got it.
Exactly. It's a good example. So you should ask me about that too. But anyway, you got to have a series of steps, and some of the steps involve an equation. So one of the steps in there is we need to add more people to the registration rolls, which, by the way, is a big issue in their state, which we could talk about. So the first step is you make sure you inflate the registration rolls, and then that gives you a credit line of people
To draw on.
that you can submit ballots for that don't even know they're registered or don't even know that they are voting.
So if you had people that showed up at the election polling center and said,
Yeah.
I want to vote, and they said, no, I'm sorry, you've already voted. You're like, no, I haven't voted since the last election. I'm sorry, you've already voted for this election. You can't vote again because the computer voted for them because the computer knew
Yes.
who they were and the county they
Yes.
lived in, unless, of course, they moved or died.
And that's what we found 80,000 of those in one county in Pennsylvania.
80,000 of what?
Of those people, that kind of
That showed up to vote and couldn't vote?
well, not necessarily only that. That's one, but of people where we have a ballot from somebody who didn't really give us a ballot.
Phantom voters.
Yes, exactly. But it's the same. Or somebody showed up and they couldn't.
80,000 in how many counties?
Vote. Just that one.
So the issue that we've heard is the people
Just that
who
one.
the people who voted, but they don't know they voted.
Right.
They stayed home.
Yes.
They
don't
haven't
even have a clue
voted.
they voted.
They
They don't
haven't
even have a
voted
clue.
in 20 years.
They don't even know.
They don't know. They don't know anything.
Yes.
They haven't voted for anyone. They haven't been to the poll. They don't
Right.
do
Are
anything.
they even
They're not-
registered to vote?
Well, they are now.
Yeah.
So in
Because someone registered them.
Yeah,
They took the census and they used the census to register them to vote and then voted
yes.
for them.
Yes.
There's that, and there's the
Got
people.
it.
There's the people who did register,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't vote anyway. But in reality, they
They
did
did
vote.
because the machine voted for them.
And then
Boom.
there's the people who registered.
Yes.
You know, through one of these groups like Rock the Vote.
Yep.
But they actually,
Or the Clinton Foundation.
But they actually get registered 4 or 5 times just by their name being misspelled. You know, Janet Jones, Janet Jones, Janet Joneses, Janice,
yes.
Janice Januses. They just misspell their name, and now they're on 4 or 5 times.
But using their address?
Same, yeah.
And
Same
when-
address, but 4 or 5 people registered.
Yes.
And
by
when you
misspelling
track
the
it
name.
down, you find out there's a ballot for every one of those Janet.
And that's why you go
Joneses.
knocking on the doors.
That's why you have to knock on the doors. You find all of
So you
those.
find out, okay, we got 8 votes coming from this
Yeah.
house, but there's only 2 people living here.
Yes. Speaking of that, right now in Colorado, because of this work, I started working with, I call them super moms. And I really believe in my soul, super moms are going to save our country. Our moms, they're out there pounding the pavement, you know, and they look at me and they say, you know, Doug, I just look at the faces of my children. That's why they're out there. Right now in Colorado, I'm going to be there this weekend. There are hundreds of super moms pounding on doors. Except in one case, they found a campground, but it was empty. That had 30 ballots from there, and they're finding them like crazy. So we're scraping them all up. So that's what I think Michigan's going to need to do at some point, and I think we're going to be working on that together in the near future.
Any other questions we need to be asking that I'm not asking because I don't know to ask because I don't know all the data you've been going through. So what should we ask?
Well, you made the statement that you said the ballots are harvested at the precinct level.
Yeah.
And then?
Regulated at the county level.
And what do you mean by that, regulated?
Well, for example, you might only get half of a certain precinct's, the ballots that you need from there, but you might take all of them from there. So what you see is you don't really see a pattern of what proportions of voters you get at the precinct level. You just see them harvesting, and they usually start at the older ages and working down. But that's the pattern there. It's not a numbers pattern, it's a preference pattern when you're mining those. But at the county level, it follows a perfect, predictable pattern. And
what does all that tell us?
well, it's
In layman terms.
it shows you what the algorithm is.
Okay.
So let me give a simple example. So let's say the 2020 census just happened, and you're curious about it. So you look at the census, and it says, in your county, there's 10.0% people have blonde hair. And you think, oh, that's interesting, okay. And then you look at the next county over. And the next county over has 10.0% blonde hair. You're like, well, that's strange, because like my community's Slavic, and those are, you know, Italian, Mediterranean people. Well, that's kind of strange. You look at the next county, and it's 10.0% blonde hair. And you keep going around the state, and every county in your state has exactly 10.0. You don't believe it. There's somebody's cooking those numbers.
This is just an example. We're not saying
right.
we don't want someone on
That's
late
the
night
attorney coming.
I was just going to say,
someone on late night comedy is going to come out and say they came out today.
I
And
wonder who would say that.
they said everyone in
Anyone
Michigan
you're
is.
thinking of?
Yeah.
but now if you went into a
Jimmy Kimmel?
but if I use that as it was funny last night. If you use it as an example, though, I'm explaining this. At the precinct level, it might not be 10%, but when you add up all the precincts, it totals that exactly 10.0 in that county, and then county to county to county, they're all 10.0%. So that's very suspicious. Then you cross the border to go from one state to the next. 3 steps over the border in your new county. Now it's 12.2%. Well, wait a minute. In my entire state, it was 10.0, and now I cross the border and it's 12.2. Then you go to the next county, 12.2, 12.2, and everyone in that state's 12.2.
So the counties all line up at the same number, which is where
Yes.
you found a key.
Boom.
So once you find a key,
I got the whole state.
you got the whole state.
Yep.
So you can find what is the key or the number for one county in Michigan, like Enso
And then I
County.
can do 'em all.
And then you can say, okay, here's what the whole state's going to look
Yes.
like. While all you've really studied is one county,
Yes.
you can